Sleepy.
So
Let
we're
me know
live.
when
Yeah, we're
when
live.
we're good. Hey,
Hey.
hey everybody. Welcome to week 18 of the G5A Virtual Cinema Club series. My name's Ashan from Bombay. I work at G5A, and my co-host
I'm Neeraj.
is
I'm a cinematographer. I'm currently in LA still.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So I mean, just for those of you who are new, what we do in the Virtual Cinema Club is we sort of create a list of directors whose films we're interested in watching, and then each week we focus on about two films from one director, and then sort of chat about them in this session at sort of the end of the week after having seen both films. We do our best to sort of have the films be readily available online across like different platforms or streaming. Some are easier than others. But yeah, and I think, I mean, basically we're sort of just focused on like talking about the films in terms of seeing how a director's work progresses, or how it's similar, or what sort of similarities are retained across two works, or how are they different.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just sort of looking at it from some craft point of view as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's sort of it, right, Niraj?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's about
feel
it.
free to add any
No,
any
that's kind of what we're doing, and I think, in general, so far been seeing films from Asia, and
yeah,
um, and we're working our way west slowly, to Western cinema.
yeah.
So we'll see kind of how things go, and obviously, if any of you who are watching have directors that you'd want to like recommend that we like check out or discuss, feel free to
Yeah, yeah,
send them our way,
absolutely.
and we'll add them to the
Yeah, the
list.
list. I mean, the list is, we sort of like make it about 15 weeks at a time, I
Hmm.
think,
Yeah,
and but we're always happy to like
move stuff around.
sneak one or two in there. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
So
cool. Should we dive into this week?
yeah, let's dive into the films of Johnny To. So we saw two
Yeah,
films of his. Election 2005 and Office 2015, which is
yeah.
fascinating
So like a
because,
long,
yeah,
yeah, it's like a
exactly.
long sort of break between the two.
I mean, he's done other films in between, but these are the two that we
Yeah, yeah,
chose. And so with that gap in between in the films, I think you get to really discover something interesting. And also, you know, these films were recommended to us, so I actually didn't even research what the films were about when we selected them.
yeah,
So
yeah,
even genre wise, from start to finish, very
yeah.
diametrically opposite films.
Totally. Yeah,
Um,
and also I think just going into it pretty much without any background,
exactly,
um,
exactly.
which is kind of nice, to be honest. I
Yeah,
think. I
it
mean,
was surprising.
I know, at least for some of, yeah. I mean, for some of the films that I know that like you suggested, and we've sort of done in the previous weeks, I've consciously tried not to look them up,
Hmm.
and actually just been like watching them as if we just sort of happened to open up like a directory and just sort of like start watching.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely. Um, but yeah, so I mean, we can start by diving into Election since that's 2005, the earlier film. Um,
yeah,
uh, so just really quickly to give you guys some background, I guess. 2005 Election, the film's basically set in the underworld of, the city. Um, and they're basically, in the midst of a change in power of the triads, one of the gangs
yeah. It's
in.
sort of the transition. It's kind of, I mean, it's very, as the name says, right?
Yeah,
It's sort of just the next. It's the next election for chairman. For the chairman of this specific triad, right? And I think what they
exactly.
mention is that there's many many more,
Yeah, exactly.
across Hong Kong and mainland.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think what's cool is that, or what was fascinating is how is sort of that like dynamic between the police and the triad, right? Like it's
Yeah,
very um, like they all sort of know each other,
yeah,
which is kind of like an interesting thing, and it's very um, it's almost like they go through that like cycle of motions as much as the election, you know.
yeah. Exactly. Um, and there's a few allusions to it too, but both the police and the triads or the gangs are working to maintain peace at the end of the day. Um,
Yeah,
which is interesting that they both have the same goals, I guess. But yeah, more
yeah,
about
and it's
this.
also kind of, I think at one point
Yeah.
the cop, like there's that, I think the scene early on where the three cops are like sitting next to each other having lunch, and one of them says, "Oh, that like they should all die," or something like that, and then another one says, "Oh, but they're democratic, like they have an election and this thing,"
Hmm.
which I thought was just kind of an interesting. You sort of like oriented right in the beginning,
Yeah,
of like what how they work, which is interesting, which is cool.
absolutely. I think that is one thing. I think, but like I was just gonna say, just to give some of the people like some context about story and plot.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
really, you have these two front runners, that are basically about to take over the election. You see the two, you see that the opening of the film kind of gives you an idea of how each of them operate. Um, and they end up picking one over the other, which obviously leads to some tension. And then the rest of the film is kind of about
yeah, yeah,
that rise to power, or and
exactly.
that tension that remains over who is going to kind of come out on top. And there's some twists and turns along the way and this and that, but yeah, that's for more for in broad strokes at least. That's what the plot of the film's about.
Hmm.
um, and I think it's a very interesting exploration of power because even if you become chairman, you're just one of many gangs, and then there's the police, and like you said, there's all these elements. And I think what Johnny To does very, very strong, like well and very effectively, and you see this kind of as an evolution when you get to some movie like The Office later on in 2015. Um, he's really good at weaving these multiple narratives together and playing, I think, with um, the tools he has to kind of change the energy of a
Yeah,
film
yeah,
as a viewer from one story to the other. And then it's like it's never just a series of action scenes, it's never just a series of conversations and arguments and dialogue scenes either. And the way he balances all these little pieces together, I think, it's never like, oh, I don't you never lose track of the main storyline, but you never also um, get like bored of following just
yeah,
the central characters. You
yeah,
want to know more about these external characters and kind of how they're you know getting how they affect the main plot.
yeah. I mean, I think what's nice is also that because I mean he does that sort of ensemble um, work really well, and I think what's nice is that you learn so much about the different like protagonists from the
Hmm.
other characters around them, you know, and also you sort of like see how they are and who they are
Hmm.
through what they've done with other people, right? I think we learn that in terms of just with the election also, and sort of seeing how like the reasons, I think that scene when they're going through when they're having the vote is really like I thought it was visually really incredible with the tea, and sort of Uncle Tang, I think,
Hmm.
um, who's basically like the main, even though he's not the chair, like he's a former chairman, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he's
yeah.
not the most recent one, but it's clear that he sort of holds
The
the
respect.
most. authority, yeah, and
Yeah.
respect, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I think he, like, everyone is still like talking this, that, whatever's happening, but then when he begins
Hmm.
to speak, everyone, is focused and listening to him,
Absolutely. Yeah.
which I thought was like, really, it's similar to what you're saying in terms of that, like the change in pace in the different sort of like juxtaposed scenes, or like the sequence of the scenes, and
Hmm.
this sort of, I felt like I from what I remember of it, was just within this scene, right? Like you had those different beats, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think you have those fluctuations and stuff. There was this one sequence in the middle of the film, or maybe later half, but where they kind of go into this thing where they kind of explain the ritual or show the ritual
Mm,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
of the the banding of the brothers type of moment, where they kind of come together, and then it's set in the past in this like period world, and then it just cuts and goes into the modern day. Once that disagreement of the election is over and they've agreed that Big D is going to be the chairman, and he's taken that baton, um,
Mm.
and he's going to move forward with it. And
Wait,
then,
doesn't he not? Isn't it Loke who wins
oh,
the
sorry,
thing?
sorry, mixed them up. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry,
And
the other way.
Big D's the one who wants,
Who wants the power?
who's sort of doing everything. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Might be. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you have that, and then but I thought it was a very interesting way because it's like it's kind of a break from the visual language of what we've seen so far, and then but then
Yeah,
he ties it back in once again, and I think that's what I was saying. It's like he does these little, side tangential little things, but the way they fit into the narrative, I don't. It never feels like it's going off track, so to speak.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
For sure.
uh, the other thing
I
we
mean, it
can.
seems like winding, but
Mhm.
not necessarily like a tangent.
Yeah,
That it's sort of completely irrelevant or whatever.
yeah. We can also kind of talk about, just the idea of the baton, I think. Uh,
Mm,
it's kind
yeah.
of like this, I don't know why I'm blanking on it right now, but there's a word for it too. But like when you use a prop or a specific device to kind of set the plot in motion.
Mm,
Um,
isn't it MacGuffin?
yes,
MacGuffin?
yes, that's what
MacGuffin?
it is. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
MacGuffin,
yeah,
right? And it's like it sets the plot in motion, and you have all these characters kind of chasing after it, um, and you have everything is kind of around that, because the moment that issue is solved and the baton is in the chairman's hand, then he has the power. You know,
yeah,
I
yeah,
thought, and
exactly.
I thought that was like I think he uses that very effectively as like a device to set everything in motion. Because until like without that, Big D and Locke would keep fighting
Yeah, exactly.
for eternity.
There's no sort of like direction, I guess, or um, not coherence, but just it's like the reason is very clear, right, as to
Yeah.
why they're fighting, and sort of
It's a
it's black and white in terms of like when does it end and when,
because
which is sort of nice.
it's a very tangible objective, right? It's like the moment you have the
Yeah,
baton in
exactly.
your hand, you have the power. Whereas the fight for power is like, yeah, it's an objective, but it's a very it can mean multiple
It's
things. It's
in
not
sort of like it. Yeah, it's very sort of
abstract.
what's the word? Yeah, abstract. Exactly. It's like abstract, and you sort of like don't know what that means or when, and it's sort of also, it's kind of, I feel like it's one of those situations where once you have it also in like a normal, in a regular sense, you sort of shift into how do you defend, or how do you hold on to the power, right?
Like yeah,
Whereas
when
I
does
feel
it
like
end?
here it would,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. Whereas here it's like, okay, I've got this now, right?
It's
And then
finite.
it's basically just done. Yeah, until the next election, which I already, like, I'm prepared for. So
Hmm.
like I know that this is my, in that sense, like my term of reign, which is an interesting um, kind of bureaucratic way,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Um,
which you wouldn't necessarily like
mhm.
expect of like gangs or triads.
Right, right, right. So Yeah, I thought that was, and I think the other thing that he does, interestingly, like going back to that, shift in energy and tones, he does that with the characters as well, right? Because
Mm,
once they accept it, it almost starts to feel like they're best friends now. They're
yeah,
they're
yeah,
on
yeah,
this rooftop celebrating together. They're out fishing, and then you have
yeah,
that reversal at the end where the moment
yeah.
that Big D tries to even suggest the idea of sharing power,
Of change. Yeah,
of
exactly.
change, um, it all turns. Everything changes. And
Yeah, and it was quite like brutal, to be honest.
oh yeah.
Like definitely wasn't expecting that. It sort of seemed like um it would stay like it would he'd be like, oh yeah, like sure, we can figure that out. But I
Hmm.
think he realizes in that moment, right, that like, oh, this guy's constantly gonna uh be doing this. Like it will
Exactly.
always be,
Hmm.
yeah, he sort of will be that guy who will get on the throne and then never give it up,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know. Um
Yeah. And so I thought that was interesting. Um, I don't know if you noticed this. I don't know if they explained this even, but you never see Locke's wife. You always just see the son.
yeah,
And I was just wondering,
yeah.
like, is she around? Like, it's like the
I don't think so.
okay, because that was like a very just like a I won't say like a loophole or anything, but it was just like it left me wondering because it was like the other side of the story in a way, like his family life. I felt
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
they were getting into something interesting,
I
especially at the end, where you see like the kid
Yeah,
who's seeing this murder and all of that.
exactly, exactly. I don't think, at least from what I remember or what I saw, I don't think they even alluded to
Exactly, right?
him him having, or like it wasn't even like, oh, he was married, or and then like he's not married anymore, like his wife passed away or something. Like there was just nothing,
Yeah,
no mention at all.
yeah. Which
Which actually, now that you mention it, is kind of, it's not odd, but it's just something that you wouldn't necessarily
Well, I just think
see.
it. Well, I just thought that the son was a very interesting character because you really only see him like two or three times. You see him
Yeah,
when the father's getting arrested, and then you see the father committing the murder. Really, right? And
correct,
so like
correct, correct. Yeah, yeah.
it served like a very interesting
But also, I think
commentary.
you also see him in, like, in the beginning. I mean, in like when he gets that phone call, or is that the same scene?
I
Uh,
I'm not
he gets a phone
remember.
call basically telling him that he's won the election.
Oh yeah, it's the same scene because then right after that he gets arrested
Okay, okay,
at the
okay.
dinner
Yeah,
table.
yeah.
But like the
Mm,
point being, because like there's another comment where they talk about how things get passed from like father to son at one point and all of that, and
mm,
so like the whole thing seemed like a very interesting opportunity to talk about that father son relationship and like explore that, um, and the personal, I guess like because that's the one humanizing side to like these guys in a way,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it felt a
Exactly. Is
little
that family? Yeah,
it that part felt a little bit, not, I won't say rushed, but it just felt kind of glossed over.
yeah. Which is like a. I mean, it's definitely like a talking point, I think,
Yeah.
because it would, like, you wouldn't, I guess, like, what is the benefit? I mean, like, what is he saying, whether it's intentional, right, or unintentional,
Yeah.
is like, what is he saying by totally ignoring this one aspect of this guy's life, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you, like, in that sense, you're sort of wondering, like, where then has this kid come from, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is, I mean, it is in that sense. I feel something people would gloss over even as a viewer, right? Because I think, unless before you mentioned it,
Yeah.
actually, I wouldn't. I think I just didn't
Accepted
even,
it.
because I think yeah, just like accepted it, because your focus is so um clearly on this race, right, or this sort of
Mm-hmm.
like quest to find the baton,
Right.
right, and then just, and I think also, because I think what happens, and I mean, this is just a theory, is that what happens is that you have so many of these characters already, right, that you're trying to like figure out, who's who, how they connected to one another,
Right.
what are their sort of like explicit links, and what are their sort of like hidden links that you were trying to like find out. Um, and so it's something that you can quite easily miss,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Yeah. Did we have any
I mean, it's just
questions?
like it's yeah.
Do we have any questions or comments so far?
We can just wait for a bit, but nothing
Nothing yet.
so far.
Okay, no worries. Um, so yeah, I mean that I think those are. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I noticed about The Office, that I thought was very interesting.
But election.
Sorry about election. My bad. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we can get into office in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Office, I
I'm trying to
really
think what
loved.
else. Yeah, I think it's wild. Just like a wild film. Like there's no other way.
Yeah,
Um,
just a
I think
fantastic.
that's the first. Yeah,
Yeah, just a great like it's just conceptually so strong.
yeah, and it's sort of. I think it's sort of also. Um, I think what's interesting in both the films is that they're fairly complex, right, in terms of their subject matter and sort
Mm-hmm.
of how they deal with the thing. But also, at least in the English versions, their titles are like oversimplified,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
which is kind of it's I don't want to say it's sort of like just complete opposite, but it's just like an interesting
Mm-hmm.
um, occurrence that I mean, I'm sure the the original title must be something
Mm-hmm.
uh, more specific or more indicative of what is to come. But I think it's just like it's sort of. I mean, it does also go back to what we've been discussing. You know, sort of across sessions, is that like how much nuance are we missing out on
Mm-hmm.
because of the subtitles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and I think similarly that's sort of something that's happens with the actual film titles as well sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where it's kind of like the English version is not necessarily as uh, true to what the story is about. I know that
Mm-hmm.
there's a bunch, at least from things I've seen, you know, from French to English,
Yeah.
where sort of like sometimes like the English. I mean, this is just a case where I can sort of like look at both next to each other, you know, and then the French one is really nice. You know, it's sort of like it's sort of subtle and like alluding to what the story is about, and then the
Yeah.
English version is just terrible,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
and
just
100%.
terrible.
Yeah, and it's like you lose a lot in subtitles, you know? That's the thing. It's like things
Yeah.
get lost in that translation, which is unfortunate, but it's the only way we can, I guess, watch these movies
Mm.
at the same
Yeah. No,
time.
absolutely. I
So,
mean, it's better than nothing.
yeah.
But I mean, I feel like this is a good point to get into Office, because I feel like while watching it, it was also like it feels like it goes back and forth, right, between this like English focus and it's in Cantonese, right?
Maybe.
Just in terms of sorry,
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I
yeah,
don't know if it's Cantonese or Mandarin.
yeah. But it like
Mhm.
what I mean is that it's kind of like, you know, because there's some words that they use that are in English, but then it's also their focus is on, you know, that like the companies that they're dealing with, so they have these like exchange in terms of the languages that they all speak or are expected. You
Yeah.
know, there's like sending out those like emails in English or letters in English and all of that stuff. So I think it's kind of um different. It's not the same, at least from what it felt like
Hmm.
from the other films that we've seen.
Yeah. No, and so just to like kind of give a general idea of what The Office is, um, it's hard to explain, so please watch the film. But
Yeah. Oh,
basically, it's
it's like yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, but so just from like a story standpoint at least, it's really about, this office that's in the this company that's in the middle of trying to work out these international deals and all of that kind of stuff. And you kind of explore the relationships between different characters within this office. And all of this kind of is also happening in the midst of the 2008 financial crisis. And so
Yeah.
there's that like added stress from like an international perspective. But really it's about the individual stories of the characters within the company, and their relationships and their all of that. So I think that's like the core of it. But then just to speak to form now, which is the most
Yeah. Oh,
incredible part of this film, is it's essentially to imagine a black box, and then you create
yeah.
this set inside it,
Yeah.
and there's no audience, but they're performing it like they would for a theatrical, more of a theatrical audience. But
Yeah.
there's no fourth wall that you have to break. They're performing to each other, they're not performing to the
Yeah.
audience,
Exactly.
so there's no
I mean, it's basically, I mean, it's like hyper real, like musical,
mm-hmm,
right?
exactly.
And it's so wonderfully done in the way that it takes you from moments that are incredibly serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
Between characters, and then also even almost like in the next beat is sort of like a satirical
Mm-hmm.
commentary on this kind of work and on this kind of life and all. And it sort of just like goes back and forth from those two almost
Yeah.
so wonderfully. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I mean, I think the stage, I mean, just like the theatrical nature of it does. And so, like it just feels like all of this is indoors, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're watching it, even though they've got like these elaborate staircases and elevators and trains and restaurants. But what's interesting is um I think in that early scene where they have that dinner with Madame, and then they say Miss Chang, right? That the
Yeah.
CEO, like she couldn't attend the dinner because she had to be somewhere else, and then you see that dinner happening like just behind them,
Yeah.
you know. But I mean, it's actually just a different restaurant. Like it's not actually the same place, but
Mm-hmm.
because we're watching a film, right? You're like, oh wait, are they in the
Yeah.
same place? At least that's what I was thinking for the first. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh wait, are they in the same restaurant? And then is that gonna sort of be like some sort of like interaction or whatever? But then I
Yeah.
realized that no, it's actually this other
Yeah.
completely different thing, which was even
Yeah,
even cooler.
it takes a little bit of like at first you're like, oh, this is a very interesting design for an office, and then you're like, wait, what's
Yeah,
happening? And you like slowly grow into it because I didn't know it at least from the beginning. So for me, it was just like figuring it out as you go, and then you just once you're and what I love about that as a form, when a director works with this as like as a thing, yeah, it takes a like conceptually on paper, like as a director, like to explain this to a project, like as a to a producer or
yeah,
whatever, it might be a little too complicated, and producer might be like, hey, how is this going to work or whatever if they don't have that foresight. But
yeah,
I think after a certain point, and it doesn't take very long because it's done so well, the audience buys into that concept, and then you're just there, and
yeah,
then you're
absolutely.
just like loving all these interactions between these characters and these moments and everything. And I think it's just it's also very interesting how he like is playing with the form of cinema and like going back to like kind of, because one of the things cinema draws from is theater, and how he's bringing that
Hmm.
into like a modern approach
Exactly.
and making it more accessible, maybe, for lack of a better word. But I'm also curious to see if, or find like actually do some research and see if Johnny To ever directed theater, like like purely theater for the stage,
Yeah,
because
that might be interesting actually
yeah.
to check.
Also, the other interesting thing is like it's not just how people normally shoot theater, so to speak, or musical theater, where it's just like
Yeah, it's
there's a
very like
stage.
one dimensional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There
You
is
sort
that
of
wall.
I feel like yeah, exactly. You sort of try and it's very much like create like looking at it from the point of view or like, oh, there's the stage and then the camera's an audience member, right?
Hmm.
Which doesn't necessarily work, because when you're an audience member, like your gaze is not fixed, like you're looking everywhere. And I feel like this does it, like this way of like shooting this film sort of bridges, I mean, it makes it a more involved experience, just
Hmm.
because you sort of do that even though you're looking at just one screen, right? Or like however you're watching it, you see these characters sort of in the foreground, and then like in the background stuff's still happening,
Yeah, yeah,
like it would in a play.
yeah,
Like you wouldn't, like you'd have stuff on like
yeah,
stage right, and then things might be happening on stage left that you're like supposed to see, but are also kind of supposed to be hidden.
What's also
So I feel like
interesting
that went really well.
What's also interesting now that I think about it is like in theater, usually at least, even though an actor is acting, he is speaking and enunciating to off the stage to the audience, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
for the he's not acting necessarily, or he's not saying dialogue to the other character. He's saying it for the audience. And
yeah,
so there's in theater there's that interaction, right? The stage and the viewers. Whereas with this, now you're playing with the form, so you can have the actors perform to each other, and because of how the camera can move into the space as opposed to being outside the
yeah.
space, now the camera is
You sort of need,
a character
yeah, you don't
inside.
need it to be, I guess there's just like an extra, there's just like a common level that like theater actors
Hmm.
are at when they're performing on stage,
Yeah,
right? That you'll just sort of like project, like there's like a
yeah,
minimum that you won't project below, or like you won't go below, even if you're whispering,
yeah. The
right?
subtleties of it.
And I feel like that's, yeah, and that sort of I mean, it works well for that, for where you are and for the setting that you're in. But I feel like in this case, it can feel
Hmm.
off-putting. Whereas
Hmm.
in this treatment, you sort of make the most of actually being, of like the camera being inside,
Hmm.
and you get to have those like quiet moments that are sort of like very very intimate, and then they sort of break into song,
Hmm.
and then that works as well.
Yeah.
um which is
Also,
which is
but also it's like, I mean, I think what he's kind of essentially doing with how he's using the camera and the filmmaking of it is like he's basically saying, okay, there's this musical happening, and as the viewer, I'm inviting you to walk onto the stage, choose where you want to go
yeah,
in a way almost. You can run in certain scenes, you can walk in certain scenes, you can float, you can do anything. It's like just feel free to go wherever you
exactly.
want within that world, which is really interesting because I think that's, I mean, yeah, I think that's like the way you want to show it, because if you just kind of put a camera kind of where the second or third row of the audience is and is just looking at a stage, I don't find that. I mean, yeah, maybe it's interesting, but it's not exciting. And I think that's what he's
Yeah,
brought
yeah,
to
yeah,
this kind of a with this
exactly. I mean,
concept.
exactly. I think it's very much, I mean, I think this would be, if it hasn't already been looked at as an option, or as like a direction, at least for um you know not documenting, but like filming
Yeah,
like theater performances. I
yeah,
think that would be,
amazing.
because I mean, I think there's so much thought and innovation has gone into the way productions showcase their or companies showcase their productions, I should say. Like I remember a long time ago seeing the Phantom of the Opera, and I felt like the performance or the production on stage was incredible as compared to the movie.
Okay,
Like the movie felt fine, of the same, like the Phantom of the
I
Opera
haven't seen it.
movie versus play. The movie is great. Like it's fine. I mean, the story is amazing. so you can't really go wrong. But just the way they done everything, in terms of like creating this whole um, like world, within that the opera house or
Mm.
the theater house on stage, when like the limitations, was incredible. But now, like, if we were to see it like how we watched Office,
Yeah.
right, I feel would be sort of just like that one level up, or just to
Yeah.
like,
I mean, even with Lion
yeah.
King, for example, right? Or like any show, any
Mm,
musical really, I think there's
yeah.
something about the way you can show a set. And I think the other thing is you're not doing it with just like a single lens. You're using the language of
Mm,
the cinema, like a wide shot versus a medium
exactly.
versus a close up to, highlight certain highlight certain things and kind of maybe even diminish other things. There might be moments where you're like in this
Exactly. Yeah.
moment I want to see the face, and you
Exactly.
can take the audience onto the stage and be like, okay, we're going to put you 2 feet away from you know that
From this,
character.
yeah.
Whereas with when when you're in a real theater, no matter what, you're always 30 feet away
You're gonna be, yeah.
from the stage.
Exactly.
You're
Exactly.
fixed.
I feel like it does such a good job. Like, I mean, like you're
Guiding.
um getting at is just bringing the best of the two forms,
Yeah.
because I think there is so much of um that training and sort of that craft that you have from like a theater, like, performance point of view, and then also sort of the craft of cinema itself, and like
Yeah.
that language. And I
Yeah.
think just bringing them, I feel like they've done such an incredible job of bringing those two together in, and letting them complement one another,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not like, oh, this was sort of like a play that they morphed into a movie,
Right.
or vice versa, like that they're doing this play and they're trying to do it for stage,
No, they actually found like a happy
which was,
middle
yeah.
ground. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
which is great because I feel like it's like it felt like at least at times they'd seen the play and been like, for each moment, what's the most effective place to put the camera and move the camera and where should we go with the
Yeah, yeah,
audience. It wasn't like trying to do like, on this side of the set this is happening and then on this side this is happening. No, it's like if there's two things happening, they're going to show the interaction, the characters running across the frame
yeah,
and the energy of it.
exactly,
They won't do like A and B.
exactly.
They'll combine the two, and that's what I thought was beautiful.
Yeah,
Like at every moment, the energy of it matched kind of what I might see if I was in a theater.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Um, did we have any questions, comments, or anything from anyone at the moment?
Nothing so far.
Okay,
So far, but we can
yeah, we can
we
linger.
can hang for a bit. Yeah,
Yeah. If anyone has any thoughts, feel free to chime in. Um,
yeah. I mean, it definitely. I think in the first like 5 minutes, even,
yeah,
I was like, whoa, what is
yeah,
going on?
exactly.
In this. It's sort of also just got that, like, music, sort of like choreography, also just like of how everyone's moving and all, which just sort of like,
Yeah.
um is yeah, it's just like
Also,
visually, it's just sort of like adds um to it.
yeah, also just COVID friendly shooting. I mean, just take up a warehouse,
Yeah,
put
yeah,
everyone in a
that too,
hotel,
that too.
rehearse, rehearse,
Exactly,
rehearse, and then
exactly.
shoot, shoot, shoot. You
Yeah,
know, it was very, very, very well done. Do we want to go ahead and announce week 19's filmmaker and films in the meanwhile while we see if there's any?
yeah, yeah. We can do that. Do you wanna
Do you have
do you
that
wanna
pulled
go
up?
ahead?
I can't change
Yeah,
my screen.
no, I'll share them with you. I'm not. I know I'm gonna butcher the pronunciations.
Uh, his first name I know is pronounced Apichat Pong.
Okay, yeah.
Um,
And so the films we're watching by him are Uncle Boonmi, Who Can Recall His Past Lives, and Tropical Malady.
yeah, and we can, you know, tell you where to find them in our Telegram group, which if
Yeah.
anyone wants to join the Telegram group, if you haven't already, just I guess you can Instagram message either one of
Yeah.
us
I'll
two
put actually
or
I'll put the link in the caption
oh, great. So
for
the link
whoever stayed this far into it.
yeah, because the Telegram group is
Um,
basically how we, just send other information for other just film things, I guess, like links and whatnot, but also just keep in touch with you guys and
yeah.
letting you know what the films are, where to see them, all of that kind of information.
Yeah, and it's sort of just a intention with that is just hoping that it becomes a place where we can just like have slightly more like casual conversations
Yeah, in between the weeks.
about yeah um, about about the films we're watching, just about film in general, whatever.
Hmm.
Uh,
Exactly. Cool.
yeah,
Um, Sounds great. And
cool.
if you haven't yet,
Sounds
we'll see you guys next week.
yeah. Thank you for tuning in.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.